Season 1 is all about that dental school student or that new dental school grad or that transitioning dentist, pretty much giving the financial keys to success now that you're in a transition period. So let's go and hop into this episode, and we hope that you enjoy it. If you are listening to this via audio, there is a video format. We actually shoot these live in the studio on video format. You can check those out either on Spotify podcasts, on YouTube podcasts as well. Head to our Team Financials YouTube page. You'll be able to find all of these different podcast shows within the video format, if that's what you choose to do.
Welcome to the
Generational Dental Wealth Podcast. We're here with Kingsley Ifedi, CPA.
And Dr. Jermaine Ifedi, your doctor's favorite doctor.
Awesome, man. Awesome. I think this episode is going to be amazing, man. But before we hop into it, what'd you end up doing this weekend, man?
Man, this weekend we had a bridal shower for my wife, man. So we've been married for a year now, but we're finally finding time to do all the marital ceremonies, man.
Yeah.
So this one was a fun one. Shout out to my brothers and shout out to her amazing sister, Dominique, who was able to put up so much time and effort, and everybody around the event that just made it so memorable for her. The brothers, we were able to surprise her, come on in, and be able to just spend some time with her. With some other family friends. It was just a great time. It was a great time. So overall, man, it's just important to always make sure you take time and enjoy the moments, right? Yeah. Don't get so caught up in the process that like life goes by. I remember when I was in dental school, I used to like tell people there's no way I'm missing like major life events just to make an A on the test. I'm just not doing it. Because if I miss somebody's, let's say somebody's bridal shower, or I miss somebody's like wedding, or I miss somebody's like baby shower, and you did all that and still made a B on the exam, or if you left anyways and made the same B or the same A, it's just like, are missing life glimpses worth, all that in the process? So that's just what I think about sometimes.
Yeah, I think about the same thing. My test is what's going to matter in 5 to 10 years. So this weekend I stopped by to see grandma. And I said, should I go out and do the same thing I probably would do every other weekend, or should I just go see her? I probably might have many more opportunities to see her, but it's like, what am I going to remember in 5 to 10 years? Is it that I went out to go have fun again? Probably won't. Or that I spent time with my grandma. She told me stories of her childhood and different things that I can now impact on my kids. So I think that's always so true, man.
I think the 5-year test is an important one, to be honest with you. Now, if this is a final exam for the biggest course of your entire time in dental school, then it will matter in 5 years. So obviously be judicious in how you apply this particular rule to your life.
Awesome, man. So the reason I said today's episode is going to be special, what we're going to do, we're going to take the whole season 1 and we're going to condense it down and just take our biggest 1 or 2 takeaways from each episode. And hopefully, to provide value, please go back and listen to each episode if you haven't. If you have, that means that you're a rock star. So what we're going to do, I'm going to kind of pick Dr. Ifedi's mind. He's going to pick my mind a little bit, and we're going to try to have a little bit of fun with this as we try to recap the season. Okay. How does that sound?
Sounds good.
Awesome, man. So season 1 was amazing. Episode 1 was amazing. We'll go ahead and start there. Episode 1 was, what is generational wealth?
Man, ultimately, I think we came to a generalized conclusion that it was the creation and also the passing of assets from one generation to the next using dentistry as your vehicle. But you can create assets any particular way. And that's why they're called vehicles, right? Like you could take a train to get to that destination. You could take a car to get to the destination. You could take a motorcycle to get to the destination, right? They're all different vehicles to get you where you need to be. But you're making a conscientious decision for generational dental wealth to choose dentistry as your vehicle.
As your vehicle. Yeah, and I think my biggest takeaway was freedom, right? I think generational dental wealth is freedom. It's giving the next generation the freedom to choose otherwise, giving them the opportunities because you've lived your life in a certain way, whether they want to go to USC all the way across the country to go to school, whether they want to go start this company, you've placed them in a position where they get to choose to do a plethora of different things. So I think that takeaway was huge. So episode 2 to here, the untold truths I wish I had known as a D4 dental student. What was your biggest takeaway?
Man, when it just comes to your living situation, it's just so key on where you're going to go after you graduate. And just understanding that more than likely your first dental job will not be your last dental job, right? Yeah. So understand as you're trying to put together what is going to guide your decision making to help you figure out what position you're going to accept, it's important for you to now understand that you're going to have short-term goals, you're going to have midterm goals and long-term goals. And you need to figure out which position upon acceptance is going to fit as many roles as possible, right? And understand, like, if you know you want to end back up, let's say in your hometown of Greensboro, North Carolina, you probably don't want to start in Greensboro, North Carolina, right?
Exactly.
You want to make sure you start somewhere that can give you the most impactful information. So when you come back, number one, you won't be locked out due to your non-competes and your different radiuses, but also number two, you come back with as much information in your head as possible.
Yeah, and exactly. I'm exactly with you. I think my biggest takeaway from that episode was just figuring out where do you eventually want to end up, right? Give yourself some time. Don't think that just because it's the popular choice means that's the right choice for you. And I tell students this, and even I tell a lot of our clients this is, you never want to make the popular choice your choice, because at the end of the day, there's problems to solve in anywhere you go. Just because everybody's floating to the major city after dental school doesn't mean that you have to, right? There's always gems in the path that is less chosen. So I think you're right on the spot.
And I think the last thing that I really got from that episode was just understanding that if you do want to purchase a house, and I'm a big advocate of home ownership, especially when it comes to the mindset of generational dental wealth, but it's also take time and make sure you take at least 9 to 12 months minimum, right? That's our rule of thumb, to be able to make sure you have enough time to figure out, do you like an area? Do you want to stay in the area? Does this area fit your long-term goals? Because you don't want to be caught into a 30-year mortgage trying to get ahead of the game. And then let's say if an associateship doesn't work out month 8 and you still got 29 more years worth of payments ahead of you, and you're not interested in becoming a landlord. You see what I'm saying? So really take your time and understand that, there's time and there's steps to everything. But the earlier on in your career is more focused on learning and establishing yourself.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Episode 3, I really enjoyed this. We started down a different path here. It's practicing dentistry in non-traditional ways, but we took a financial perspective on that. What was your biggest takeaway, Doc?
Honestly, there's just so many different ways you can practice dentistry.
Yeah.
And, going through school, it was really, it felt like it was choose either academia, private practice, or DSO. And those were like the only 3 main options. And a few different scenarios, you might get public health as an option to make a 4th, right? But there's just so many different ways you can possibly practice. I mean, now traveling dentistry is becoming an option for you to do full time, right? Now you have different ways you can work in, let's say, nursing homes. You can work in rural environments like a public health. You can make sure you can do 1099 and you can work between 2 to 3 different offices. There's just so many different ways you can practice dentistry. And the beautiful thing about the more you start to learn and understand yourself, the easier it is to try to figure out what fits your long-term goals. Exactly. So understanding that there are so many different non-traditional ways to practice dentistry, the best thing you can do is just start asking questions. Start finding people who are already where you want to be or have different insights that you can now add to your particular insight. Because I'm a firm believer that just because I do it doesn't mean you need to do it.
Exactly.
Right? But that means that you can take the flavors that go into our soup, right? And figure out, do you want to add it to yours?
Yeah, no, that makes so much sense. And kind of taking a financial perspective on that episode, one thing that I really wanted to drive home was, yes, the different ways you practice dentistry would affect the different income that you receive, but also the way that you receive that income. I mean, here in the States, right, there's so many different ways you can receive your income, whether that be via an employee, via a contractor, via you having a different agreement with each situation. But it's really having a financial and being financially savvy and just understanding that, you really want to negotiate the terms of your agreement there, right? Because you have control over how you receive that income and just giving you the keys on how of understanding, right, what are the differences of the ways I'm receiving this income in this particular environment.
That's a perfect segue into episode 4, the biggest hacks being unveiled with travel dentistry, lifestyle and its perks. If you can give me, what was your biggest takeaway? Because that was a big financial push for you. What are your biggest financial takeaways for students or doctors?
Yeah, so my biggest takeaway from episode 4 was really understanding the difference between W-2 and 1099. And what we talked about was travel dentistry, how travel dentistry typically on a 1099 contracting basis. The biggest difference when it comes, me as a CPA, when it comes to taxes is as a W-2 versus 1099, it's the order in which you get your income and then spend your money and then whatever's left over. So for instance, as a W-2 employee, before you ever get your check, you typically have your taxes taken out. And then whatever's left over, you typically take that money, you go live your life. You go feed your kids, you go on vacations, you do all these different things that you need to do, right? But flip that around, and now as a 1099 contractor, what the IRS says is you receive your income. You spend all the money that you need as far as business purpose, you being a contract, different things, right? So you spend, and then whatever's left over, then that's what you now pay taxes on. So if there's nothing left over, let's say that you've taken all the deductions and you've gotten all the credits. If there's nothing left over, you pretty much pay no taxes. So we just took that piece there, and we wanted to just drive home, right? Just the differences in how money is taxed if you're a W-2 employee versus if you're a 1099 contractor. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
For me, it was just merging your life together with your business. So understand there are certain common expenses that we're all going to have to take. If you're a contractor, you're going to need a car. If you're a W-2 dentist, you're going to need a car, right? Like, you're going to eat food. You're more than likely going to talk about dentistry while you're eating food. It's hard to be a dentist and never discuss dentistry while you're having meals, right? So therefore, your meals are going to have some business nature to them, right?
Yeah.
So just understand, like, the quicker that your life and your business merge into one another, and to understand that it has to be done in a healthy way. You don't want them to merge in a way that, like, the business side of your life is taking up so and consuming so much, but in a way that by merging the two together, now you can come to a place of equilibrium. So each part has its own place, right? As you talked about before, equality doesn't mean that each part is going to be equal, right? Mm-hmm. It means that you have a balance, right?
Yeah, harmony, exactly.
Harmony, right? So that's what I really got from it. And just understand, as a 1099, you just have more options on how your income is going to be dispersed, right? Yeah. And what kind of deductions, business write-offs you're going to be able to take.
Yeah. Yeah, and this isn't a good versus bad. You know, typically W-2 employees will be afforded much more benefits, 401k match, typically some type of health insurance. So, there's a trade-off, right? There's a trade-off, but just depending on your risk tolerance, where you kind of see yourself going, depending on what situation would suit you best. You know what I mean?
And to be honest with you, one of the greatest things that we were able to discover together is the fact that you can have both.
You can.
You can have the benefits from the W-2, right? You can have the sick pay leave. You can have the holiday pay. You can have all the different perks, 401k match, all those health insurance, medical insurance, and then as well, contract 2 or 3 days a week.
Yeah, I'm with you. So episode 5, we started taking questions from the audience. People started asking us different questions. So we wanted to make sure that we got on those. So episode 5 was dental school grad office hours. What was your number one takeaway from that episode?
Personally, one of the biggest things for me, I just enjoy when people have questions, because we can go over a lot of different things, but when the questions come from a place of like, I need help, it gives a different kind of fuel to the fire here, So again, for office hours, you can always DM us on our personal page or business page to make sure we can get your particular questions answered. For this one in particular that stuck out to me was understanding how liquidity works. Exactly. So liquidity meaning, basically how quickly you can get cash if you need cash out of an asset. Some people define it as within 24 hours. Some people define it as within a week. But basically understanding that early on in your career, or when you're going through a transition period, let's say you're a 10-year dentist and you're transitioning into an ownership role, right? Mm-hmm. You want to be cash rich more than you want to be asset rich. Mm-hmm. In that particular window of time, right?
Yeah.
Because the worst thing is for you to be cash rich and asset poor. So if you're going through a transition, let's say a contractor says, honestly, it's going to be $50,000 more for this particular add-on than we originally estimated. If you're asset rich, it's going to be hard for you to really get those funds in a quick enough time to keep everything on time with your timeline. Yeah. So even when you're graduating and you're looking for your first job, you want to make sure you have, when your first couple paychecks that are coming out, you're building up those cash reserves. So God forbid somebody gets fired or accident happens, you have enough liquidity to keep you afloat.
Exactly. And it's just a timing thing, right? As you progress in your professional career, that formula might switch a little bit. Well, we want to focus on how we can now help you accumulate more assets, maybe properties, maybe you want to start a dental practice. But in general, right, when it comes to building wealth, it's all about timing, right? And where you are in that timeline, a spectrum of being a professional.
And this leads to one of my personal favorite episodes, episode number 6.
Yeah.
Success leaves clues. Kingsley, give me what you got from that one, man. I love this one.
Yeah. So success leaves clues. The biggest thing to me was impact. that in every season of life, you want to be able to look back in that particular season and say, this is what I was able to do, and this was the impact I was able to leave. We talked about how, even when I was playing football, I won a national championship. And what that afforded me to do was, no matter what happens, nobody's able to take away the 2019 Celebration Bowl national championship from me. Then I can look back and I can reflect. I had an impact in that season. We talked about the team organization that you and Jen founded along with some other members back in 2012. And now that organization on East Carolina's campus is still having dividends today, to where that is a nonprofit that's thriving. So it's just figuring out in your life specifically, you as a dental student, you as a dental professional, how can you leave things throughout your existence so that people can look back and say, hey, Dr. So-and-so was here. Yeah.
That's key to me. I'm loving where you're going with that, because it's just like, sometimes it's easy for school to separate our lives into different phases: middle school, high school,
Exactly.
undergrad, grad school, everything else, right? But it's important for us to be able to stratify our lives into areas that mean something to us, right?
Exactly.
Like, let's not let a piece of paper at the end of a 4-year journey be what marks a new season in our lives, right? So even while in dental school, being able for us to be able to create different businesses and for us to be able to be a part of so many amazing nonprofits and organizations.
Exactly.
To me, I'm halfway through dental school, but this is a significant moment personally in my life, right? This is how we leave clues. So just understand that a success clue can be left at any given time, right? It could mark a 3-month journey. It could mark a 15-year journey, right? Some people write books that took them 20 years to put together. But ultimately, you're going to understand that each part of your life needs to leave some type of clue behind. So when you look back and say, what did I do with those last 3 years? You can point to, this is exactly what I did. And someone who's interested in following in your footsteps or emulating a lot of the success that you've personally achieved has stepping stones that now they can climb upon.
Awesome. So episode 7 was one of my favorite episodes as well. We talked about the number one secret to building generational assets.
Yeah.
What was your biggest takeaway?
Biggest takeaway for me was, how do you view your dental degree?
Yeah.
You know, is it a piece of paper? Is it one of the two things? Is it a cash machine, or is it a generational asset? Mm-hmm. That's really what it is. Are you using it as a way to produce income that substantiates the rest of your life, and you buy nice things, and that's the main premise of the degree, which again, there's nothing wrong with that, because now you can focus that passion and energy into a different project outside of dentistry, right?
Exactly.
Or is it a generational asset that, you know what, I want to use the degree to be able to produce businesses. I want to use it to be able to produce ideologies that we can now create nonprofits, transform the oral health of an entire community, to be able to influence others to consider and think about becoming dentist one day. Because again, how do you become what you don't see? So trying to become a little bit more visible to the public, so now more people are interested in becoming dentists in the future. So it just really all depends on what you see it as, right? So again, if it's a cash cow, then you know it's more input, output. If it's more of a generational asset, you're trying to create something that's going to outlast your physical capacity to do dentistry.
Yeah. And, looking back on this episode and kind of thinking back on it, I think my biggest takeaway as of today is me as a CPA. Obviously it gives me the opportunity to provide a life for myself, an income for myself. But lately I've been thinking, how can I have a bigger impact using this degree, using this license, than just me obtaining income? Because that part's going to be there. It's always going to be there. All right. That's why we're professionals. But truly, how can I now find someone that is, very or looking for a financial professional that's looking to mentor them? I've had so many people reach out and say, hey, I aspire to run a CPA firm one day. Could you kind of walk me through those ropes? So I'm trying to now take a deeper dive into the license that I was able to go get, and say it's not just an income producing tool for me, but it's an impactful tool, and I want to help others achieve that as well. So I think it's
that's good. And the reason I like that so much is because, again, you could just be a CPA who doesn't really, who's not really interested in doing things outside of the CPA world. But that's why this this show is here, right?
Yeah.
Because you want to be able to touch more professionals and be able to help people live their generational dental wealth, rich life.
Yeah. Yeah. And I really enjoy that. I always enjoy having a personal relationship with our clients, because what it affords me to do is kind of put down the CPA hat and almost put on the advisor hat. And I get to kind of see them grow. And I think that's just so unique when you start to use your profession as slightly bigger than the thing that you clock in and out of, man.
You call it advisor, I call it financial therapist, but we'll move on.
Awesome. So episode 8, we talked about unveiling the top 3 perks of dental entrepreneurship. What was your biggest thing there, man?
Personally, I just love the fact that within dentistry, we just have so much control of what our day looks like.
Exactly.
And sometimes I feel like we cede that control to entities or to bosses or whatever it looks like, because number one, we don't realize how much control we truly have. Full-time at Empire is 3 days a week, 12-hour shifts, you know? In that way, you're getting your 40-hour week within a 3-day period, and you can spend more time with your family than you do at work.
Yeah.
You know, the thought of 5 days being mandatory and there's no wiggle room to that, it's kind of counterintuitive to what dentistry is, because it's such a physically demanding career path. Growing up, I remember they used to say 4 days was full time because you need that 5th day to have your body recover. But now it's just like 5 days is normal. And what people like to disguise it as is 4 days and a half day on the 5th day. But the half day is from 8 to 1. That's basically full time with no lunch, you know? So I just want everybody to understand, like, you have so much power when it comes to how you want your dental life to look like. Really choose how and what kind of days you want to work, what kind of hours you want to work. And the clearer you can get with that and make life fit, make work fit around your life instead of your life fitting around your work.
Yeah. The episode to me was so unique. You know,
shout out to Dr. Simone.
Yeah. So we were actually in Miami recording that episode. And number one thing I got is, we're on the road. We're in a different city, in a different state, handling business, right? Meeting with different business minds, but also this was, we had fun. We went to the Panthers game. We were able to do a lot of things personally, but we went for business. And so that was allowing us to have a business purpose of being on this travel and take business deductions, even though there were some personal elements, right? Because nobody expects anybody to go to Miami and not, have a little bit of fun, right? But we were there to handle business. So that's just the perks of dental entrepreneurship, is now a lot of your life becomes a write-off, right? To a certain extent. Awesome. So episode 9 was really, really practical. I really enjoyed just giving people some practical things just to implement today. So we talked about an easy 7-step checklist to dental success. Pretty much the ultimate grad gift. So what was your biggest takeaway there, man?
So for myself personally, when I was coming out of school, it was just get myself organized, get everything done. And because I knew I was interested in practice ownership, I never really relegated those responsibilities to the HR or to whatever particular company I was working with, right? Because they're going to give you the option, hey, just sign this piece of paper and then we'll handle all the rest of the credentialing and everything else for you.
Exactly.
Me personally, I wanted to be a part of the process, because if I abdicate all that responsibility now, what do I do later on? So it's important when you're working with your HR and to honestly build a nice, healthy relationship, because you have to find a balance between, I need the HR to understand that I need to get this information for myself and really understand this information, but also be respectful of they have a job as well.
Exactly.
And they need to make sure you get credentialed properly. And once you build that kind of codependency on one another and everybody has their role in it, you'll learn a lot of keys and gems on how they're going about credentialing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you'll have your own MPI number, right? MPI 1 versus MPI 2. MPI 1 being a personal, MPI 2 being more organizational. It can cover more than just one provider.
Exactly.
As well as simple things like your EIN. You want to make sure you have that for your business entity.
Yeah.
You want to make sure you have your DEA number. Just simple things like that, the sooner you get it all done up front, the easier it is, especially if you plan on contracting, to have it ready to go when somebody asks for it.
Okay, awesome. So episode 10 is why every successful dentist has a dental specific CPA. I guess I'll just touch on that really quick.
Please go into it, man.
I really enjoyed this one because this one kind of gave you a perspective into the world of the advisor that's most there to help you. CPA, like we always say, I always achieve to be the dental best friend. I have a rule. You can't lie to your provider. You can't lie to your CPA. Ultimately, we're there to cover you. We're there to make sure that you are good to go. So the biggest reason that each person needs a dental specific CPA is dental specific CPA versus just an ordinary CPA is able to talk the language that you are talking. One example I give is like when you specialize within your field, right? You get that next level of understanding, not that somebody that generally may not be able to figure out, but we've seen it so many times. We've had so many extra repetitions, whether we're talking about, production versus collections, why it's important to understand production is good, but what are you collecting on? And why is the collection rate a little bit lower, a lot lower than what you're producing, right? Is it because you're not billing the insurance correctly? Is it because you're not have the right front office protocols with your patients that come in, right? You're not collecting anything up front. So it was really putting on our advisor hat a little bit more and not just doing numbers and crunching numbers and filing tax returns, but it's honestly saying, this is what's going on. How can we actually help you become a better dental practice owner or a better dental professional?
To me, everything you're saying is honestly spot on.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things that you and I really discuss is really just understanding the nuances that money flows differently in an office compared to how it flows like on a paycheck, right? Mm-hmm. So just like you said, there might be a difference between your collection and your production, right? And understand that it might be just due to a timing. Some people are like, oh my goodness, why did my collection rate just drop 2%? You might have just delivered 2 Invisalign cases that you're having to wait to get paid for both of them.
Exactly.
So that naturally drops your collections. So just understanding how it's interwoven and be able to have somebody to be able to call and ask, is what I'm thinking what's actually happening within the numbers? Because what's actually happening with your numbers and happening in real life, honestly, are oftentimes different. So sometimes you need just a bridge to be able to connect those two sides.
Yeah. Also, just one of the biggest things, especially working with you at Empire, we wanted to go ahead and get into place was that year-end tax planning. I remember last year we were able to take a look at your financials before the year end and say, hey, Doc, you're going to have a pretty substantial tax bill. You're starting this practice. We don't want to. We'd rather you keep the money or you put the money back into your practice than for you just to write a check off to the IRS.
Yep.
So one thing we wanted to do was say, what type of machinery do we need and what things can we do before the year ends so you don't have to pay this large tax bill? So I sat you down and said, hey, you might need to look into getting that CBCT machine that you've been thinking about.
Sooner than later.
Because if we don't get it into service by December 31st, the 31, you might have to write that bill. You might have to write that check. So just sitting down with your dental specific CPA, we're able to now say, okay, how can we put this thing into service? How can we now take what you're already thinking about as a dentist, but put on a tax savvy hat so that you don't have to write that extra check to the IRS? And that can save you thousands of dollars for a decision that you were already going to make. Just the timing difference.
And that's why I call him my dental best friend.
Awesome. So the next episode 11, was a day in the life of building a successful dental practice. This is when I was interviewing Doc and just trying to get a perspective on just some insights on what his day looked like. What was your biggest takeaway there?
Biggest thing is just being able to think about all the things that go into a day.
Yep.
And it was honestly an eye-opening moment when I realized that so much happens, so many emotions goes through, let's say, a practice owner's mind or an associate on a day-to-day basis. Again, just for myself personally, it could be we're dealing with payroll. We're dealing with staff-related things. We got to deal with patients. A patient might have told us that they have cancer. And we got to make sure we pray for them. We got to make sure that we're providing a top-level surgical experience for these particular patients. We got to make sure the prescriptions are sent over properly. We got to make sure all these different things are done. And honestly, it gets exhausting just thinking about all the things we need to do. But the biggest takeaway I got is just because you wear more hats does not mean that the standard that is set will reduce for those amount of hats, right? When you wear more hats, that means that the standard has to continue to rise with each accompanying hat. And one example we gave is just because you're a dentist and you're dealing with so much in your office does not mean the IRS is going to be understanding that you forgot to pay your taxes.
I wish.
You know what I'm saying? And that's the reason it's important for you to get help in other areas that you necessarily don't either have the expertise or the time to handle. So now when I'm worried about my primary focus, which is taking care of my patients, I know on the back end, my estimated taxes and my year-end tax planning is being handled appropriately.
Exactly. Awesome. So episode 11 was our second part to our office hours. We talked about student loans and pretty much how those are beginning to become active again. So kind of give us your main thoughts around episode 11, or excuse me, episode 12.
When it comes to student loans, one of the biggest things we talked about is that they're due now. I mean, we can't wait on this anymore. If you have that bill, do not ignore it. There is a piece of legislation out there that is trying to push for any missed payments for the first 6 months of this restarting of payments to not hurt your credit. But again, as we've seen, a lot of pieces of legislation haven't necessarily come into enactment the way we thought that they would. So when you see the bill and it's due, please make sure you take care of that. So make sure you go on to the site of studentaid.gov, and that will tell you who is servicing your loans, when are the payments due, and it'll either have it directly on there or it will point you to who is housing your loans and how to get that paid appropriately. And also, one of the other bigger takeaways for me personally is if you're a student or you're moving into an area that provides the opportunity, really take advantage of these service-based loan repayment type programs.
Yeah.
Because understand, like, you don't only get paid in monetary ways. As dentists, we provide value in so many different ways that the government is telling you that if you're willing to work in this particular area, we see so much value in you, we will reduce your student loans.
Awesome. So episode 13, we talked about pretty much compounding interest. What does that mean? What is the principle behind that? I then kind of putting a twist on it. How is your life compounding interest, right? I call it the human compounding interest effect.
So tell me more about that, Kingsley, because when it comes to compound interest, I mean, that is your language.
Yeah. So compound interest, just as a simple principle, is you are making interest on top of the interest that you've already earned. So for instance, if you have $1 and now the interest you get is $1.05, instead of you still getting interest on that first dollar, you're now getting interest on that $1.05. So that additional 5 cents is now earning you more. So all that means, instead of living life like decisions are adding up, I think the decisions are multiplying against each other. It's almost like, it's having a bigger effect. And we just talked about how in every season of your life, it's compounding to the next, right? We talked about just getting real simple. If you don't go to class, right, then you miss the study material. If you miss the study material, then you mess up on the exam. And then next thing you know, these decisions are snowballing. But for the good effect, for the opposite effect, same thing with good decisions in your life. The fact that you decided to go to dental school, the fact that you decided to take school seriously, and now you're a practicing dentist, and now you are afforded more opportunities because you handled business in the past. So that was my biggest takeaway with that.
I love that you touched on it's not just financial.
Exactly.
Financial is the easiest way to track things. It's a number, right? And the beautiful thing about numbers is it's the same regardless of what language you're speaking. It's the same across all. So I love that you, especially coming from the financial side of things, have such a clear understanding that compounding decisions is honestly more important than compounding numbers.
Exactly.
Like when it comes to your life, understand, if all else fails and your account goes from wherever it is down to zero, you can start over. That's the beautiful thing about it, right? Like money, it only has as much significance as we allow it to have.
Yeah.
Right. But when it comes to this decisions of your life, 30 years, 40 years worth of decisions, if you're not happy with how things are compounding, it's not like you can just press erase on everything. Now, it's not like your life is over. Anybody can start fresh and build up from there. But understanding that life has, in its compounding decisions, is something that the sooner you start making good decisions and they compound, the longer you get to enjoy the fruits of your good decisions. The sooner you become a dentist, the longer you get to be a dentist. Yeah. Right? The sooner you become and have a great relationship with the enjoyment that comes from dentistry, the longer you get to enjoy dentistry. Yeah.
All right. Episode 14 was personally one of my favorites as well. We got to get on the road and actually go speak to the UNC Chapel Hill School of Dentistry. I enjoyed it, getting around the students there and meeting the professors. And it was honestly an honor. So what was your biggest takeaway there, and kind of tell us?
One of the biggest questions that I posed at that particular talk was, what is your biggest non-dental accomplishment? Yeah. Because sometimes I feel like we get so wrapped into our identity as dentists that we forget that we are still people. And we were us before we became dentists, and we'll be us after we retire from dentistry.
Yep.
So it's important to always keep in perspective, what are those accomplishments that are within you that you truly take pride in? The things, the skills, the relationships, the organizations that you've been able to be a part of and continue to build out. And by keeping perspective on that, it will help create that kind of balance in your life necessary for you to strive for your next level of success.
Awesome. And my biggest takeaway was being able to shake the hands of a lot of different dental professionals, dental school students, being able to talk to them about financial perspectives. A lot of them, surprisingly, we're talking about practice ownership. We're talking about real estate and how to pretty much do some other things that they weren't necessarily learning in dental school. So, they have so many different questions. It was enjoyable to be able to kind of give them a nugget here and a nugget there. I can tell that they really were very interested in what we had to say there.
For sure. I mean, this was a fun recap. We're so excited how everything has unveiled itself in season 1.
Shaking out.
Season 2 is already in the mix right now. We're excited for all the amazing guests that will be a part of season 2. Season 1 was just setting the groundwork, really us two unveiling and really getting deep on a lot of different concepts. Season 2 is going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of your doctor's favorite doctors. It's going to be a good time.
It's going to be a good time, and we can't wait to show it to the world, and we can't wait to invite all of the guests that we're inviting and having their perspectives and their minds on this show. So if you like this episode, if you like this season in general, if you're just loving this show, don't forget, go ahead and find us on YouTube if you want to watch the video format. Don't forget to like and subscribe and do all of the things. Leave us a review. Send it to somebody that you think may enjoy this show. That's all we ask from our viewers of this show, man. So it's been an awesome season.
It's been a pleasure. Y'all take care. Y'all keep on living y'all's rich life.
Yeah. Can't wait to see you soon.
Peace.
When Jehovah bless you, you gon' be shout.